Well, as the clock ticks down on Theresa May's window to get agreement on her withdrawal deal, it's reported the Prime Minister may now be willing to scrap the Irish backstop, the plan to avoid a hard border in Northern Ireland. Well, Martin Howard QC gave evidence to the Northern Ireland Affairs Select Committee this week about the implications of Mrs May's deal and the backstop. He's a chairman of the Brexiteer group Lawyers for Britain, and he's with me now here in Westminster. Welcome to you.
Good morning.
I just want to ask you first of all about what the European Union spokesman said this week. Do you accept that if there is a no-deal Brexit, there will have to be a hard border in Northern Ireland?
No, I don't. There will be no need to have physical infrastructure on the border. What will be needed is to exercise controls on goods that cross the border, but that can be done at the premises of businesses which are sending and receiving goods.
So the European Union was wrong when they made that statement yesterday, that there would be a need for physical infrastructure at the border?
I'm not sure they said that. You've got to listen carefully to the way people use words, and some people use the words hard border to mean any sort of controls at all, whether they're conducted at the border or not. Now, I mean, I don't think that's a reasonable interpretation of what a hard border is. But that may be what the European Union was saying.
Well, what about the interpretation of World Trade Organization rules, which again seem to imply when you have different trading blocks, you actually need a physical control?
They don't, actually. There's no requirement under WTO law to have physical controls at the border.
Where can you cite where this doesn't take place?
Well, there are very open borders, for example, between Switzerland and the European Union. And between Norway and Sweden, both of which are... Yeah.
Both of them, you know, I've been to both places and both of them have physical infrastructure.
But you don't need it.
Well, I mean, why is it there if you don't need it?
You need... Well, let's look at the position in Ireland and the Irish border. There are something like 300 road crossings.
Well, we know it'd be a difficult problem, but all I'm saying is
you don't,
the evidence is that where there are two different trading blocks, you've cited Switzerland, you've cited Scandinavia. In both cases, there are actual physical infrastructure.
But you don't need it. Let me explain this. There's no requirement under WTO rules to enforce customs controls by having a man wearing a peak cap putting a pole across the road on the border. What you have to do is, if you impose tariffs, for example, you have to impose the same tariffs to all comers. But you can do that by saying to businesses, if you import goods...
So you're proposing something entirely new, which it's not been tested. You can't produce an example of anywhere where it happens elsewhere.
No, it's not entirely new. Every business that files VAT returns at the moment...
No, we know in other contexts there isn't a need for borders, but in this context, you are proposing something that's entirely new.
No. Every business that files a VAT return, on their VAT return, a box they fill in is quantity of goods imported from the European Union. Now, what you do to collect tariffs is you require them to put their customs declarations in there. It's not rocket science. It's not something new. You can collect tariffs without having to have...
It is additional bureaucracy, even by your model, which would lead to delays in cross-border trade on the island of Ireland, right?
No, it would not. People get very, very confused about the way customs operates nowadays. It isn't done by people with clipboards and peak caps.
All right, but even if it's done electronically, you're talking about more forms and infrastructure, again, in electronic infrastructure, which doesn't exist.
It does exist. The electronic infrastructure exists because almost all customs declarations for goods that come in from outside the European Union are filed online electronically. Only a tiny percentage are actually physically inspected by customs.
But you're a lawyer, and presumably, therefore, you think that whatever happens, the law should be upheld.
Well, obviously the law should be upheld, but if you look at Ireland at the moment, smuggling, of course, does take place across the border to avoid different excise duties.